In 2017, I think it was October the 19th, it was in the University of Hawaii, that their giant telescope, I remember it was called Stars 1, but that's not its full name. Anyway, it observed a interstellar object visiting our solar system, and it became known as Oumuamua, or Oumuamua, Oumuamua. And most people were saying this is an asteroid, but it was huge. But this object coming into our solar system will cause some kind of an impact, because the movements it's making will cause vibrations to go out into the world. And in Hawaii, when they called it Oumuamua, it's known, that's the Hawaiian for the words messenger from afar arriving first. So, many people were suspecting maybe this was some kind of scout ship sent forward to check out our solar system and planet Earth, maybe. Apparently it was going 196,000 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. And the way it was moving also, they seemed to think that maybe it looked like it was being a controlled movement. Though the scientists like to say it moves like a comet. But it was an elongated shape, like a giant, huge, massive, huge, magnificent rock. I want to say it was a mile long, but I have a feeling it was a quarter of a mile long or something like that. But it was huge anyway. I never saw any pictures of how wide it was. Be intriguing to know. But anyway, so this interstellar visitor came to our planet. And Gurdjieff talks about how in other systems, not just our own, when a certain planet or has a comet or an asteroid come close to it, it causes reverberations. And this is all part of the cosmic law. And I'm going to read a bit from page 622. And the word for our sun he calls Oz. And he says, as regards the causes which bring forth this same action of this cosmic law, and he's talking here about the objective reason and the law of the action of Solioonensius, which is to do with the sun and the actions that are happening with our sun. And some people, well, I believe we're going through a solar minimum at the moment. And Solioonensius causes, well, different things are happening with the sun which causes reactions out onto the rest of the planets of this solar system. But anyway, I'll carry on doing the quote. As regards the causes which bring forth this same action of this cosmic law, Solioonensius, they are for each planet different and always flow from and depend on what is called the common cosmic harmonious movement. Moreover, frequently for your planet Earth, what is called the centre of gravity of causes is the periodic tension of the sun of its system, which tension proceeds in its turn thanks to the influence upon this sun of a neighbouring solar system which exists under the name of Baleoto. So I'm going to end quote there. So he's talking about how the neighbouring solar system to our own can affect our solar system, and I'm sure it's the same for us. Whatever is going on in our solar system will affect Baleoto's solar system. And Gurdjieff goes on, in this latter system, however, such a centre of gravity of causes arises because among the number of its concentrations there is a great comet, Sony, which, according to certain known combinations of the common cosmic harmonious movement, at times approaches on its falling very near to its sun, Baleoto. I'm just going to jump in here. So he calls each solar system after the sun that's in it. So Baleoto solar system is also the sun's called that. He calls our solar system Oz, which is also the name he gives our sun. Anyway, I'll carry on. Which is forced by this to make a strong tension in order to maintain the path of its own falling. This tension provokes the tension of the suns of the neighbouring systems, among the number of which is the system Ours, and when the sun Ours strains itself not to change its path for falling inherent to it, this sun Ours, in its turn, provokes the same tension in all the concentrations of its own system, among which is also the planet Earth. The tension in all the planets acts also on the common presences of all beings arising and breeding on them, always engendering in the beings, besides desires and intentions of which they are not aware, the feeling called sacred Iabolionoso, or as your favourites would say, the feeling of religiousness, namely that being feeling which at times appears in the desire and striving for, as I've already said, speedier self-perfecting in the sense of objective reason. Now, as you know, those of you that read Gurdjieff, he's trying to help us develop our sense of objective reason. But I feel that what's been going on in the last few years has a lot to do with this Solioonensius, this action that's happening on our planet and how our sun's changing. Many say that our sun's going into a solar minimum, which is why we've got all these strange activities happening in the climate. I know many people go, oh, it's all climate change, blah, 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 blah. But from what I'm reading of Gurdjieff, it's a natural thing, but I think we've probably made it worse with all our pollutions and our littering and how we've discussing how we just have litter everywhere. I've groaned on about this before. But in the last few years, there's been an intense amount of volcanoes going off, and the reason I'm doing this was because I've read again that another big volcano has gone off in Hawaii this week. And I've had people say to me, oh, volcanoes are going off all the time, but not the amount of them that are going off at the same time in the last few years. And we've had a lot more earthquakes and definitely heavy rainfall in places that would not normally have rainfall. Like I believe in the Middle East, they've had something like a year's worth of rain in an hour or something, which is very unusual. And that Australia is still under snow when it should be going into its summer season and such like. So we know the climate's all different. Which is why I wonder if Gurdjieff was preparing us all for this kind of thing. Like, there is a big change going on. I've talked about it before in other shows. Humanity is on the brink of a new way of living, hopefully not new world order, but instead perhaps a coming together and an understanding of waking up. And he's saying, obviously what I've just read in this last paragraph about how when these tensions happen, the sacred Iabolionosa, or as your favourites would say, the feeling of religiousness, namely that being feeling which at times appears in the desire and striving for, as I've already said, speedier self-perfecting in the sense of objective reason. And I've noticed in the last few years many people coming, not just to me, but to other people that read Gurdjieff and wanting to know more, because they are feeling the sense is something is different. They might not necessarily want to go to a religious institution or an organisation of a religion, but instead are looking for something more deeper, more esoteric, where we know that the religious institutions try to keep it as shallow as they can so they have the control. So people are having this being feeling, this waking up to a religiousness, but more of a, I suppose what people would say today is their spirituality. They're striving for more. They know this isn't it. And it probably is to do with the fact that our sun is changing. It's weird that we've had that strange asteroid, comet, whatever you want to call it, Oumuamua, come through the planet recently, through the solar system recently. And maybe if that was affecting the solar system next to us, from what it's come from, it's going to cause vibrations out that are going to change things. So I'm, trying to encourage everybody to read Gurdjieff, obviously. And he's talking about how he's here to sell solar power, and that we're supposed to become sun beings. And if we look at all the old esoteric traditions, normally it's about the sun gods and attaining to be a sun god yourself, or a sun being. Follow the light path and not the dark path. And he goes on to say, in this same, this is from the Russia chapter, sorry I should have said that at the beginning, the Russia chapter, I'm on page 622 and 623. It is interesting that when this sacred feeling, or another similar to it, which was also engendered by a certain common cosmic actualization, proceeds in the common presences of your favourites, then they accept it as a symptom of certain of their numerous diseases, and in the given case, for example, they call this feeling nerves. And I suppose in the last few years, people's nerves have been shaken with what's been going on. Though many are looking obviously to the governments and the scientists for answers, and the governments and the scientists are not looking at the esoteric side of it. Though I do wonder, do the higher up ranks, the cabal that runs this world, was aware that things are going to change, so they were trying to dumb people down so that we don't start asking questions and saying, look, the planet's changing, the universe is changing, there's strange actions happening. I remember in the 1980s, I was, when I was a teenager, I was very into this whole climate change thing, but got very confused as to whether a ice age was coming or a heat wave of so much that would take out all the crops and everything, and that we'll all be starving. Well, it feels like a bit of both at times, but I must admit this week in England, it's freezing. And it seems to be getting very cold across the planet. I'm hearing from other people, us British like to discuss the weather, about how cold it is where they are. But Gurdjieff goes on to say, it is necessary to remark that such an impulse inherent in the presence of all free-brain beings of our great universe formerly arose and became actualized almost normally in the majority of terrestrial beings of that time, namely from the time of the removal of the organ Kundabuffer from the common presences of the free-brain beings of the planet Earth, right up to the second Transparnian perturbation. Now, the Kundabuffer was the thing that was put into us humans to distract us from the mistake that was made in creating the Earth, so that the angels could come and fix the Earth while we were distracted in kind of like material gain or seeing the world a bit upside down and topsy-turvy. And then the Kundabuffer was removed, but many people still operated as if they had a Kundabuffer. They couldn't seem to wake up. And thankfully there are a few people that did wake up so that they can pass on this ancient knowledge and this wisdom. And I'm sure you're the kind of person that probably isn't listening to your Kundabuffer, that isn't there or aren't still operating on if it was there, because you wouldn't be watching this show otherwise. So he's trying to remind us that we want to kind of be aware of what's happening, be aware of what's going on in the world and the solar system, and how it's creating chaos, and the lunatic asylum continues on our planet Earth. Because, as we all know, we live in a very illogical world. It could be run much better if learned beings were running it. But he goes on to say, but later, among the number of chief evils which flow from the conditions of ordinary being existence established by them themselves, especially when in the presences of every terrestrial free-brain being there began to become predominant the evil inner god of theirs I mentioned, named their self-calming. Then it occurred that in them, under the influence of the action of Solioonensius, instead of the desire and striving for a speedier self-perfection, a something began to arise such as they themselves characterized by the words need of freedom, which chiefly serves the cause of the arising there of these same grievous processes of theirs, similar to this last Bolshevism. I will explain to you somewhat later how they represent themselves, this famous freedom of theirs, and now I'll only tell you that the feeling which arises from the action of Solioonensius strengthens in them the need for some or other general change in the conditions of their ordinary external being existence, which until this was somehow in them. After the second Transparnian perturbation to this ill-starred planet of yours, that is, after the loss of Atlantis, the action of the cosmic law Solioonensius in the general presences of these favourites of yours was actualized at least 40 times, and almost from the very beginning, each time, thanks already to this strange need of freedom which has since been fixed in the majority of them, almost the same proceeded as in recent years still proceeds on that part of the surface on your planet on which the totality of the existing groups is called Russia. And as I was saying, this is his Russia chapter here that he's talking about. And he goes on to remind the readers that we need to look back at the saintly Ashiata Shirmash. I've done shows on a saintly Ashiata Shirmash, and me and Josh have done a show about him on my channel, who was the first to turn his attention upon which he relied for the fulfillment of his mission, had taken part in the functioning of that consciousness of theirs which has become habitual for them during their waking state. So what I'm trying to say here in a very mixed up way is that with this cosmic law Solioonensius, which I believe is going on now, this is a chance for us to use them energies, that action, to wake up, to strengthen ourselves, become the person that we're supposed to be, not just be an ordinary person, but become, you know, an awakened person, find our higher being and connect with that, and be ready for the coming changes. So once again, I recommend everyone to read All and Everything and Beelzebub's Tales. That was from the Russia chapter. I can't remember if I put that on the YouTube channel. It's definitely on the Internet Archive as an audio download, as I put all of Beelzebub's Tales on there. I'm sort of making my way through putting them up on YouTube. It's having to put pictures to them and rendering them into film that's kind of stopping me. But I will get on with it. And I know somebody else, Mick Garland's put all my audio up on his channel somewhere on YouTube. But otherwise Internet Archive. But obviously read the books if you can. Go and look at the sun. Be with the sun and be aware of what's going on. Stay being solar beings, peoples.